Welcome to the Nation of History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. Burning buildings light up the sky over occupied Poland as military forces suppress local resistance with extreme severity. In May 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising became a landmark of courage against repression, and entire city blocks were systematically destroyed during the fighting in the Polish capital. Resurrectionists operated in the United Kingdom during the 18th and 19th centuries as suppliers of bodies for anatomy study. Hired by medical researchers, they opened recent graves to obtain specimens, a controversial practice driven by the shortage of legally available bodies for science. In 1925, Dr. Heinz performs an experimental procedure using animal-based substances on a patient in Berlin. Combined with ultraviolet light and physical exercise, the practice was promoted as a rejuvenation method, showing the unusual boundaries of cosmetic medicine in the interwar years. In 1934, American politician Huey Long is approached by a young Boy Scout asking for an autograph. Known for his populism, he planned to run for president, but his path ended after an attack on September 8, 1935, and he died 2 days later. American soldiers inspect thousands of wedding rings found in a cave next to a complex in Germany. The May 5, 1945 record shows the scale of valuables taken during the conflict, and the items would be cataloged in an effort to identify families of affected people. Children operate heavy machinery in a textile factory in 1910. Documenting these exhausting and risky workdays helped drive child protection laws in the United States, and the image exposes unfair conditions before later social reforms. In 1946, a dinner table is carefully set for 14 guests in a solemn-looking setting. The arrangement shows symbolic items suspended above each seat, hinting at an unexpected outcome for attendees who did not know the gathering's true intent. In 1925, French veterans of World War I attended a banquet in Paris, captured by photographer Henri Manuel. The images show the lasting toll of the era on the soldiers' faces as they navigated social reintegration after living with long-term effects in post-war Europe. A person is shown restrained by the canguo, a heavy wooden device used for public punishment in ancient China. The board displays paper notices describing the offenses, serving as a tool of public shaming in busy areas, a practice that lasted into the early 20th century. In 1945, Igor Guzenko, a worker at the Soviet embassy in Ottawa, hides his identity under an improvised hood during an interview given to Sol Pet. His decision to defect in the West exposed intelligence networks and became a turning point in the era's global tensions. German soldiers cross a snowy field with their hands raised in surrender before Soviet troops in a defensive position. During the harsh winter on the Eastern Front, the Red Army's advance cut off enemy units and forced thousands into captivity on Russian territory. Dozens of flamingos take shelter in a bathroom at the Miami Zoo to protect themselves from Hurricane Andrew. The storm on August 24, 1992, devastated South Florida with extreme winds, and the improvised move saved the birds, becoming a symbol of people and animals facing natural disasters. An African-American man stands alone watching a rally by a radical group in Jackson, Mississippi in 1950. The composition reveals the deep racial divide and social tension in the southern United States, where individuals faced hostility while seeking dignity and basic civil rights. During a session on May 17, 1912, the French medium Eva C. was photographed supposedly producing a glowing apparition between her hands. The claim fit the peak of early 20th century spiritualism and drew the curiosity of investigators and students of mysticism. 4 bright lights appear in the sky over Salem, Massachusetts on the morning of July 15, 1952. Photographed at the time, the aerial phenomenon fueled intense debate about unidentified flying objects in the United States and drew public and investigative interest in the idea of extraterrestrial life. During the so-called Battle for Grain in the Agropontino region, the Italian government pushed for self-sufficiency in cereal production. In 1938, coordinated media efforts promoted an image of national strength by using farm labor as a symbol of government vigor. Sailors from Imperial Japan land in small boats during the Tsingtao Offensive, a major theater of the World War in Asia. From August 27, 1914 to November 7, 1914, British and Japanese forces worked together to seize the strategic German-held port in China. A British soldier smiles as he shows a steel helmet damaged by an impact during World War I, fighting in 1917. The image captures a rare moment of relief and luck at the front, pointing to the effectiveness of personal protective gear introduced to reduce losses in European positions. British troops from a Scottish regiment rest in an earthen defensive trench during the early months of World War I. The 1914 image shows traditional kilts in the field and a small dog among the soldiers, highlighting routine life and military logistics on the European front line. On the streets of Sarajevo, a quiet act of solidarity challenges segregation policies imposed during the occupation. In 1941, a Muslim woman uses her own veil to cover the yellow star on her Jewish neighbor's arm, shielding her from dangerous identification during a time of intense pressure in the region. In 1915, troops from the British Royal Horse Artillery demonstrate the discipline and rigorous training of their draft horses. Mutual trust between soldiers and animals allowed complex field stunts, highlighting the strategic importance of British horse units during the World War fighting. During a cavalry training exercise at Fort Myer on September 16, 1918, service members display skill and complete trust. As soldiers sit at a dining table in an open field, a rider makes a precise jump over the group, showing the rigorous preparation of United States troops. Religious protesters walked the sands of Daytona Beach between 1982 and 1983 to criticize swimwear they considered improper. Keith McManus's photo captures the culture clash between conservatism and the freer behavior of American youth at that Florida beach town. In 1958, patrons at the Mint Casino in Las Vegas fill rows of gaming machines. The venue became an icon of entertainment growth in Nevada, and the layout reflects the era's look during the rapid rise of casino culture. In June 1949, New York City saw a curious demonstration of the double ender, a double mouthpiece pipe designed to be shared by 2 people at the same time. Made in an era of odd inventions, the item was meant to encourage socializing through tobacco use. In 1963, inventor John H.T. Rinfret introduced an unusual way to discourage theft with his anti-theft suitcase. The mechanism used a chain that, when pulled, opened the bottom and dumped the contents onto the ground, making it harder to escape quickly with valuables. During the wartime period in 1942, nylon shortages made stockings hard to find. To keep up with the era's expectations, many women painted their legs and used eyeliner to draw fake seams, creatively creating the illusion that they were wearing hosiery. During the opening of the 1960 Summer Games in Rome, Taiwan's delegation staged a silent protest while marching on the track. The group carried a sign objecting to the Olympic Committee's requirement that the country compete as Formosa instead of the Republic of China. Elvis Presley waves to admirers as he drives back to Graceland just after midnight. The photo was taken at 12:28 in the morning on August 16, 1977, and is considered one of the last images of him alive, just hours before his death shocked global popular culture. During his time in West Germany in 1979, a young recruit faced serious conduct problems before being discharged from the armed forces. His service record was marked by harmful habits, ending with his official dismissal in March 1981. A Speyer wine bottle remains sealed after being recovered from a Roman tomb in Germany, with an estimated age of 1,680 years. The glass vessel preserves a yellowish liquid and a solid layer that have endured over time, making it a rare archaeological example that offers clues about ancient preservation methods. Henry Ford introduced a revolutionary prototype on August 13, 1941, with a body made from biodegradable plastic derived from plant fibers. The vehicle used biomass fuel and reportedly showed greater impact resistance than conventional steel in tests at the time, aiming to link agriculture with the American automobile industry. American military aviation reached a remarkable milestone over San Diego. Flying DH-4B biplanes, aviators Lowell Smith and John Richter carried out an in-flight fuel transfer on June 27, 1923, allowing aircraft to stay airborne longer and permanently changing global range and air logistics strategy. A towering mooring structure served as a boarding gateway for passengers traveling by airship. The nose docking method required precise work by ground crews, allowing travelers to reach the luxurious suspended cabins via elevated walkways. The future of home entertainment was reimagined in 1967 with a concept portable television that fully enclosed the viewer's head. The prototype aimed to create an immersive, personal experience, anticipating the logic of modern virtual reality devices decades early in a bulky form. Industrial robotics advances in the 1960s enabled fascinating demonstrations like Unimate serving coffee in 1967. Often described as the world's first industrial robot, it was designed for heavy factory work, but its ability to handle delicate tasks symbolized the promise of an automated future. A hydraulic-powered robotic mannequin was developed for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration between 1963 and 1965. Designed to test the strength and mobility of spacesuits, the automaton simulated complex human movement to support astronaut safety during Apollo program missions. The robot Freddy Ford appears as a standout technological novelty at demonstrations in the 1960s. Built by the Ford Motor Company to interact with the public and answer questions, the metal automaton used car components to promote a futuristic vision of automotive engineering. Post-war futurism in the United States produced bold concepts like a luxury lawnmower equipped with air conditioning. Developed in the 1950s, the prototype had a glass dome to protect the operator, reflecting the era's obsession with comfort and space-age style, while trying to blend daily chores with industrial technological progress. The idea of life on the road took on new forms in the 1930s with the development of early mobile homes. Built onto vehicle frames of the time, these structures had entry steps and working windows, letting families travel new roads with more comfort. A new sport emerged in Austria and was introduced in St. Moritz, Switzerland in January 1938. Called ski sailing, it combined traditional skis with a cape that worked like a sail, allowing athletes to use wind power to build speed. In 1970, Dutchman Hannes de Jong won the world title in a pole-sitting endurance contest. Competitors had to remain seated on small platforms raised over water for long periods, reflecting the era's unusual endurance and patience competitions that gained popularity in Europe. In the 1930s, dance marathons became endurance spectacles and popular entertainment in Atlantic City. A winning couple poses with trophies after completing 1,173 hours of competition, showing the intense physical effort demanded by these long-running events. In 1930, the first flight attendants of Boeing Air Transport pose in uniform in front of an aircraft. Bringing registered nurses on board to care for passengers transformed commercial aviation and boosted public confidence, and this pioneering group set early service and safety standards. Aviation pioneer Glenn Curtiss is shown settled into a rudimentary glider, highlighting the early steps of aeronautical engineering. His innovations were key to developing faster, safer aircraft and to establishing technologies that would shape modern air travel. An old three-engine commercial biplane sits on a runway, representing the early days of civil aviation in the first half of the 20th century. With its complex web of cables and double wings, the large aircraft reflects the technological progress that made longer passenger travel possible. Several Pan American van and storage moving trucks fill the planned streets of Lakewood, California, on a day of coordinated deliveries. In 1953, the suburb became a symbol of the post-war American dream, as thousands of young families moved into newly built, standardized homes. A vending machine in a New York subway station sells chocolate bars for just 1 cent in 1953. The mechanical device offers several choices for riders wanting a quick snack, and this kind of urban convenience reflects post-war cost of living and consumer habits in the United States. 2 workers staff the counter of a bakery in Moscow during the 1950s with shelves full of breads and Soviet-era staples. The everyday scene shows the shop's organization and period work clothes, reflecting life and the economy in the Russian capital. In 1925, Sunset Boulevard cuts through dry hills in Beverly Hills, showing a landscape far from today's development. At the time, it was just a dirt road following the natural terrain, with lone vehicles passing between palm trees and wide-open lots. A view of Old Vennel near High Street in Glasgow was documented by Thomas Annan in 1868. Hired to record conditions in the city's poorest areas, he produced work that immortalized narrow alleys and human figures within the Victorian urban landscape. Considered the oldest known piece of news photography, the image shows the moment a man is approached by authorities in France. In 1847, daguerreotype techniques were still new, allowing everyday events to be recorded for the future with an unprecedented realism. 4 women pose in front of a rustic home made of grass and earth in Custer County, Nebraska. In 1887, life in the Old West demanded resilience from settler families who used prairie resources to build shelter and establish new rural communities. A woman from Zanzibar poses for a studio portrait during the 1890s, wearing clothing typical of the Tanzania region. The image highlights East Africa's cultural and visual richness in the late 19th century and serves as a document of local fashion and society under colonial influence. A busy street in Jerusalem is photographed in 1920 with a Deutsche Palästina Bank sign visible in the background. The image documents cultural diversity and foreign financial institutions in the early British Mandate period, reflecting the Middle East's complex commercial networks. In 1944, two American soldiers talk with a member of the Swiss Guard at the Vatican. The image highlights the visual contrast between wartime uniforms and traditional Renaissance armor, capturing a unique cultural meeting amid Allied movement in Italy. Canada's ice hockey team shows its technical dominance by scoring a decisive goal against the United States in Chamonix. The matchup took place at the first Winter Olympic Games in 1924, helping cement the sport on a global stage against France's snowy mountain backdrop. Betty Robinson made history in 1928 by winning the 100-meter sprint at the Amsterdam Olympic Games. The American athlete became the first woman to earn a gold medal in track and field, opening the door for future generations of competitors worldwide. During the 1908 London Olympics, women archers competed in the national round under strict Edwardian dress standards. Archery was one of the few events that allowed women to participate at those games, highlighting the athletes' elegance and technical accuracy on the British lawn. During the Summer Olympic Games held in St. Louis, Missouri, the event was tied to the World's Fair. Alongside official sports and unusual exhibitions, athletes tested physical skills in uncommon agility contests, such as jumping over suspended barrels on the field in 1904. Neurosurgeon Harvey Cushing carefully documented his patients with photographs in the early 20th century to study neurological conditions. These clinical portraits supported the development of new medical techniques by recording physical findings before and after treatment. Roger Mills and Berta Linson celebrate their marriage in Jackson on August 2, 1970, marking the first legalized interracial marriage in Mississippi. The event symbolized the fall of one of the last remaining segregation barriers in the southern United States, turning a civil act into a historic milestone. Margaret Ann Neve sits for a formal portrait that captures her extraordinary life from 1792 to 1902. Reaching 110 years old, the American centenarian became one of the rare people to live across 3 different centuries, with a lifespan spanning revolutions and major global change. In 1937 in London, a police officer uses his rain cape to shelter 2 small children during a public event. The image captures a simple act of kindness amid a crowd waiting under unsettled weather in the British capital, reflecting social norms and the community role of authorities in pre-war England. In 1927, little Marcia Pinkenfield won the title of the most beautiful child in the United States. Only 6 months old, she posed surrounded by silver trophies that marked her win in a national baby beauty contest, a very popular event in the early decades of the 20th century. In 1923, a modest wooden garage served as the first headquarters of the Walt Disney Company, marking the humble start of a global entertainment empire. Located in California, the simple structure housed Walt and Roy Disney's earliest creative efforts as they produced classic animations. A crowd of children and teenagers gathered in the 1930s for an official meeting of the Mickey Mouse Club. At the event, members wore paper masks with the famous character's face, creating a striking shared look in the early days of fan culture. In 1979 in London, Michael Jackson pays tribute to silent film by dressing as Charlie Chaplin's character, the Tramp. The American performer shows his admiration for pantomime and physical comedy that defined an era, and the photo session links two cultural icons in an artistic salute. Chinese leader Mao Zedong holds his final public meeting on May 27, 1976, receiving Pakistan's Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. With his health clearly failing, he sits in an armchair, signaling the close of a defining political era in Asia. Actress Rosalind Russell is caught in a playful behind-the-scenes moment from the film Anjos Rebeldes, released in 1966. Dressed as a nun, she rides a bicycle with her legs in the air, showing the light mood during the making of this classic comedy in American cinema. In 1931, Swedish actress Greta Garbo poses dressed as the spy Mata Hari in a decaying Hollywood mansion. The film production leaned into the historical figure's exotic appeal and mystery, and the grand setting strengthened the dramatic mood that cemented the star's fame in silent and sound film. British actress Jessie Matthews is photographed wearing a lavish, towering headpiece that ironically contrasts with claims that it was a small accessory. The extravagant costume, filled with feathers and sparkle, reflects the opulence of stage and film productions during entertainment's golden decades. A photography pioneer and model poses in front of her own lens using a Rolleiflex camera to create an artistic self-portrait. In the 1950s, Bunny Yeager's technical and visual work helped set new standards, noted for balancing composition and lighting in natural settings. A woman works a hand-spinning wheel to spin cotton outdoors in the early 20th century, sitting by a body of water under a tree's shade. The image preserves a traditional textile craft and captures the intersection of domestic work and natural landscape in a time of change. Austrian farm workers labored during the hay harvest in the 1900s, using oxen to haul heavy loads on wooden wagons. The image captures a typical scene of rural life in early 20th century Austria, showing hands-on farming methods that depended entirely on animal power and shared fieldwork. Portuguese women from the Azores are shown wearing the traditional capote and capelo, an iconic garment made from heavy dark fabric. Its large structure hides the face and shoulders, and it remained a defining piece of regional women's clothing for generations as a symbol of modesty and cultural identity. The trade in copper and brass goods in Egypt during the 1870s reflects the era's vibrant craft culture. Seated among engraved trays and stacked pots, the merchant represents everyday life in local markets where handwork supported the city economy and drew travelers. Zoomorph B is an impressive monument from the Maya civilization carved around the year 780 in the Quirigua region of Guatemala. This massive sandstone boulder shows complex glyphs and mythological figures photographed in the 1880s as archaeological expeditions were rediscovering such treasures. Stela D is a magnificent stone monument raised in the ancient city of Quirigua in present-day Guatemala during the 8th century. The detailed carving depicts the Maya ruler Kak Tiliu Chan Yopat in ceremonial dress, serving as a key political and religious record of that classical civilization. Thérèse of Lisieux appears dressed as Joan of Arc in a play staged inside a Carmelite convent in France. The 1897 image is unique in religious history as the only known photograph of a canonized saint portraying another figure also honored by the Church. Around 1940, Meister motorcycles became symbols of freedom and modern life for many women stepping into new social spaces. The German maker produced lightweight bikes that made city travel easier, letting riders explore motorized independence in that era. In 1932, the Women's Detention Facility on Roosevelt Island hosted activities that were unusual for institutions of that era. Marksmanship training was meant to include and prepare women with specific skills inside that New York institution before it was shut down years later. In 1935, the Hungarian engineer Stefan poses beside his complex mechanical creation packed with gauges and industrial switches. The device was surrounded by theories about making objects and people invisible, reflecting the era's fascination with experimental technology. In 1949, a young Inuit girl carefully climbs down into her ice igloo in Arviat in the territory of Nunavut. The traditional structure served as essential shelter against the extreme climate of northern Canada, and the ethnographic image preserves the 20th century continuation of Arctic ways of life. A creative approach to rural security appeared in 1937 when a farmer dressed his scarecrow in a skeleton costume. The odd figure added a spooky touch and used visual contrast to deter intruders, showing how everyday objects could be repurposed into simple, watchful tools. On London streets in the 1930s, the muffin seller was a familiar part of British city life. Balancing trays on their heads and ringing bells to announce fresh goods, these workers kept an old trade tradition alive, and the image preserves their look and craft before major post-war changes. A laboratory technician closely watches a couple during a lipstick wear test in the mid-20th century. The unusual job aimed to verify cosmetic staying power in real situations, turning everyday life into scientific data for the booming beauty industry of the time. In 1946, a beachgoer is photographed wearing an unusual protective outfit designed to block intense ultraviolet rays. The garment was a polka dot covering that wrapped the entire body and head, including a mask with eye openings, reflecting early concerns about skin health during leisure time. Glass eye prosthetics reached an impressive level of detail around the turn of the last century. Skilled artisans used glass blowing and hand painting to replicate irises and veins with precision, offering many color options to match each patient. In 1955, Piet van der Zwaard poses beside his vehicle at a time when he was recognized as the heaviest man in Europe. Weighing 206 kilograms, or about 454 pounds, he became well known in the media of that era, representing an uncommon body type in a society still rebuilding. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.